In the still, gray chill of a Philadelphia February morning in 1957, life along Susquehanna Road moved slowly. It was the kind of place where time seemed to stretch, where winter coated the land in a silence that felt almost sacred. On February 25, just beyond the outskirts of a wooded thicket in Fox Chase, a slippy, semi-rural neighborhood in the northeastern part of the city, a college student wandered through the brush. He was part of a long tradition of local men who roamed the area looking to trap rabbits. But this time, what he found wasn't wildlife. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't natural. Tucked away in the undergrowth was a large, weathered cardboard box. At first, he thought little of it. Garbage, maybe. But as he approached and peeled open the flaps, what he saw inside stole the air from his lungs. There, curled like a sleeping child, was the body of a young boy. He was pale. He was naked. His limbs were tucked close to his torso, wrapped in a thin flannel blanket. His hair had been hacked off roughly, clumps still clinging to his flesh. He couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old. The sight was so horrifying, so disorienting, that the young man did something that would forever haunt him. He turned and walked away. He didn't report the body. Not that day. 2 days later, another man, a driver passing through the area, noticed the same box and grew suspicious. He did what the first didn't. He contacted the police. Soon, flashing lights lit up the quiet stretch of land. Officers combed the scene, their faces pale as they studied the child's lifeless form. What stood out immediately was the sense of careful staging. The boy hadn't just been dumped. Someone had taken time to wrap him, to place him neatly, to put him inside a box that had once contained a baby's bassinet from J.C. Penney. This wasn't rage. This was cold, planned, calculated, but the boy's identity was a complete mystery. He had no clothes, no ID, no scars that could be easily traced. His fingerprints were taken, but there were no matches in any database. His face was studied, drawn, and distributed across newspapers and posters. A reconstruction was done. Forensic experts attempted to piece together everything from his approximate age and weight to the condition of his skin. He had been malnourished. His body showed signs of long-term neglect. Bruises, abrasions, and possibly even old fractures suggested he had suffered more than just the violence that ended his life. He had lived a painful existence, possibly an invisible one dot. In the weeks that followed, the city became gripped by grief and confusion. How could a child be dead, violently discarded, and no one report him missing? Police and volunteers papered the city with flyers, begging for leads. America's unknown child, the posters read. College students from nearby universities joined the effort, blanketing neighborhoods with the boy's face, his sad eyes frozen in time. But no parent came forward. No neighbor remembered him. Hospitals, schools, orphanages, all were contacted. There was no record of a boy matching his description. Nothing. It was as if he had never officially existed, not on paper, not in the system. Like a ghost who had briefly materialized in flesh and blood, only to vanish again. In the years that followed, the boy in the box case became one of the most heartbreaking and baffling unsolved crimes in American history. It wasn't just a mystery, it was a national shame. For the police, it became an obsession. Over the decades, hundreds of leads were pursued. A used baby blanket store, a missing child from Florida, a traveling carnival, a wandering preacher who claimed to see things. Each trail eventually went cold. One early suspect was a local foster home less than 2 miles from where the body was found. It was run by a couple who took in many children and operated quietly for years. Rumors swirled, but no physical evidence tied them to the boy. Another lead came from a psychic who claimed the boy had died in a rural home with a white fence. Police even followed her visions and found a house that matched, but the owners had no connection to the child. Then, in 2002, a woman came forward with a bizarre and chilling story. Known publicly only as M, she claimed her mother had purchased the boy, who they called Jonathan, from his biological parents in the 1950s. M said the boy had been physically and sexually abused for years before dying one night in a fit of rage. According to her, her mother had bathed the child, cleaned the blood, and wrapped him in the blanket. They then drove to Fox Chase and placed him in the woods. While this theory seemed promising, investigators could not verify any of it. The woman suffered from mental health issues. Her timeline was inconsistent. No record supported her claims. And her mother, the alleged abuser, was already dead. Still, this M story stuck with many. It painted a picture of a child completely cut off from society. A boy whose life was full of pain, who was never enrolled in school, never taken to a doctor, never allowed outside long enough to be noticed. Despite decades of effort, the case remained ice cold. But the boy himself was not forgotten. In 1998, he was exhumed so DNA samples could be taken. Technology had advanced. Forensic scientists hoped to create a genetic profile that might one day be matched to relatives. After the procedure, the boy was reburied with a new headstone that reads simply, "America's Unknown Child." His grave, watched over by local volunteers and retired detectives, became a quiet shrine for those who refused to let him be forgotten. Then came the rise of genetic genealogy, the same technology that helped identify the Golden State Killer in 2018. Volunteers and forensic specialists began uploading DNA sequences to public ancestry databases. It was tedious work. Most people in the databases were still living. But with enough second and third cousins, it became possible to triangulate identity even from far-off matches. And slowly, the impossible began to take shape. In November 2022, the Philadelphia Police Department made a historic announcement. After 65 years, they had a name. The boy in the box was no longer unknown. He was Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13, 1953. He was 4 years old when he died. His birth certificate had been located. His parents had been identified, both long deceased. One of them had ties to the area where Joseph was found. But even with a name, the haunting questions remained. Why was he never reported missing? Who raised him? Who hurt him? His living relatives, those still alive, refused to speak. Some denied ever knowing of him. Others offered only silence. The family, it seemed, was not ready to shed light on Joseph's life. And maybe some of them never knew he existed. That's how far he had been buried, both literally and figuratively. The city of Philadelphia tried to offer some peace. A small ceremony was held. His name was added to the gravestone. For those who had fought for decades to bring Joseph justice, it was bittersweet. He finally had his name back. but he still had no voice. His story is now studied in criminal justice programs, forensic classes, and true crime podcasts. But it's more than that. It's a wound on the soul of a nation that allowed a boy to be born, to suffer, and to die without protection or acknowledgement. His short life was almost erased. But the people who cared, the police, the students, the volunteers kept his memory alive through 6 decades of darkness. They refused to look away. In the end, the mystery of Joseph Augustus Zarelli is not just about one child. It's about how a society treats its most vulnerable. It's about what happens when a life slips through every crack. It's about silence, the silence of those who knew and said nothing, and the silence Joseph was forced to endure. And it's about hope, because even after 65 years, the truth fought its way to the surface. Through science, through persistence, through love. Joseph's name lives on now, spoken aloud where once there was only a faceless sketch. But his case is not closed. Investigators are still hoping for answers about who raised him, about who failed him, about who discarded him like garbage on a winter morning. His name may be known, but his story, the full story, is still unfolding. And as long as there are people willing to remember, people willing to ask, Joseph Augustus Zarelli will never be forgotten.